Right then, so welcome everyone. This is our session dedicated to managing delegates. So if you've ever found yourself unsure about the best way to handle a cancellation or a delegate transfer, or you've had a cancelled delegate reach out asking if they can be rebooked onto a course, this is the webinar for you. So today we're going to be covering everything you need to know about managing your cancellations, transfers and rebookings, giving you confidence with those and breaking down the financial impacts as well of each of the options that you've got. So by the end of the session, you'll be equipped to take the right steps for each of those processes.
So just before we get into it though, a little bit of housekeeping. There we go. So everything that we're going to be covering today is a standard feature. It's available off the shelf. So there's no extra modules needed. This is all core things, so you can use it all straight away. We are also recording, so we will send out the recording to everyone on the session and to everyone who registered as well. So you can watch it back, or you can, send it on to your team if you'd like. And then finally, the Q&A is open now. So if you have any questions as we go, please submit those, and then we'll cover all of that off at the end. So I'll just pass over to Jack now to go through today's agenda.
Yeah, perfect. So today we're going to be looking at cancelling delegates. We're then going to take a look at rebooking delegates. We'll move on to transferring those delegates. And then, as Jenna mentioned, we'll finish with our Q&A.
Yes.
So for those that don't know me, this is a little bit about me. My name is Jack, and I am one of the CSMs here at Access Planet. We've added these new extra bits in now. So my favorite feature is a dashboard. I think they're really good visual summaries and a really good way to get a nice quick reporting tool. I like roller coasters and theme parks, and my target is to do 200 by the end of 2025. I'm at 160 at the minute.
Nice.
My
yeah.
fan.
And hi, for anyone who doesn't know me, I'm Jenna. I'm Access Planet's Customer Education Manager. Favorite feature, custom fields. I have to say they make the platform work for everyone. So yeah. And then outside of work, I love rollerblading and also cuddling the cats. And then, as it says here, obviously not at the same time. That would be chaos. Cool. All right, enough about us. Let's move on.
So yeah, first of all, we're going to start with looking at cancelling delegates. So there's always going to be a time when the delegate can no longer attend the course. It could be that they're unwell, the course is no longer appropriate for them. So we need to know how to handle those cancellations properly. So in this section, we're going to look at the two different ways that you can cancel a delegate's place on a course, the implications of that, so what happens to the booking financially with both of those options. So what are the ways that you can cancel off a delegate? The first option is the most popular, and that's using the cancellation wizard. The second option is a bit simpler, but this is where you just change the delegate status on the course to cancelled. But there are quite a few differences between the two. So the cancellation wizard is going to set the delegate to cancelled. It's also going to factor in any cancellation fees that you want to apply for your customer to pay. It's automatically going to process a refund to your customer if they are due one. And then the credit of the remaining balance on their original invoice so that the financials are all tied up following the refund. Whereas if we use the other method, where we just change the delegate status to cancelled without using the wizard, we change their status, so they're set to cancelled, but that's it. There's no automatic refunds, no fees, no credit notes associated. So what this means is that when you want the platform to complete a financial update for a cancellation, you should use the wizard. When you don't want any financial updates, for example, when you've already processed a refund maybe in another way, you should just change the delegate status to cancelled. Both options will trigger any delegate cancellation workflows that you've got set up, however. So it's important to remember that they both will trigger your workflows. Just the financials is mainly the big change.
Yeah.
So we'll look at them in a bit more detail, and we're going to start with the delegate cancellation wizard.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Jack. So with that cancellation wizard, as Jack said, this is the approach you take when you want the platform to complete those financial updates alongside the cancellation. So there's three kind of states or scenarios that we're going to go through. So we're going to look at cancelling a delegate that's been paid for, so their invoice is completed, cancelling a delegate that's been invoiced but hasn't paid yet, and then finally, what happens when you cancel a delegate that hasn't been invoiced at all. So we'll start with that top one, so cancelling a delegate that's been paid for. So here we have our gardening level 1 course, and if we just jump down to the financial section, we can see it costs £100 per delegate. It's a nice round number. jump back up to the top, and we have 3 delegates registered onto this course. So we've got Barry, Jane, and Samantha. As spoiler, we're going to cancel all of them. So we're going to start with Barry, whose invoice is completed. So if we go and have a look at Barry, we can see the total was 100. They have nothing outstanding. And in the transactions, we can see £100 has been paid via backs. So if we just head back, we are going to cancel Barry. So right click and then cancel delegate to use that cancellation wizard. So in this popover, we can then apply a cancellation charge. So we can say £10 for Barry for the privilege of cancelling. Add in some cancellation notes. This is always good for reporting later. And then confirm the cancel. So we can see Barry's now cancelled on the course. Great. The invoice is still completed. So let's go and have a look at Barry's invoices, because he should now have 2. Cool. Okay, so Barry has 2 invoices for this course now. This is the original one, 126. And if we have a look at what's happened to that original invoice, we can see that it's still £100, but it's now been credited £100. If we have a look at the transactions, the original backs transaction that was £100 is now 90. We'll find that £10 later. It's been refunded, and then there's the credit note. So £90 has gone back. And if we take a look at our new second invoice that's been generated, that's for the cancellation charge. It's £10 and it is not outstanding. And that's because that missing £10 from the original backs transaction has come across to this new invoice. So Barry paid £100 originally, has had £90 of it refunded, and the remaining 10 have been applied to this new invoice for the cancellation charge. So that makes sense. So we'll move on to the next example, which is cancelling a delegate that's been invoiced but hasn't paid yet. In our case, that's Jane. So Jane has an invoice, as you can see there, and it's currently outstanding. So if we have a look at Jane, cancel Jane off. Same process again, we'll put the same cancellation charge in. Again, add notes is always useful, and then cancel the delegate. Oh, let's have a look at Jane's financials now. So we'll right click, head to invoices for Jane. And then once again, we've got 2 invoices. So the original invoice is now completed. It was outstanding before. So you can see that that is £100 and it has been credited £100. We're not expecting any payment on that original invoice. And we can see that that's the credit note. Now, if we go and check the new invoice for Jane, that is £10 for the cancellation charge, but different to Barry, it is outstanding because Jane hadn't originally paid anything up front, so there was no original payment to transfer to this. So Jane owes us £10 for her place on the course for that transfer. Stop saying transfer, cancellation fee. So our final scenario for cancelling is someone who hasn't been invoiced yet, and that is Samantha. So Samantha, no invoice there at all. If we cancel Samantha off, there we go. There isn't an option for a cancellation charge here because there was no original invoice. So this one's quite straightforward. We just cancel. And we're done. There will be no invoices for Samantha if we're going to have a quick look. Just the delegate has been cancelled. Nothing financial has happened because there wasn't an original invoice there. Cool.
Perfect. So to sum up, when you use the cancellation wizard, the delegate status is going to change to cancelled. A new invoice is going to be raised if you applied a cancellation fee. If the delegate was paid, part of that original payment will be allocated to the cancellation fee and the rest will be refunded. And finally, a credit note is generated to balance off the original invoice if they had one.
So the second approach that Jack mentioned earlier is where you just change the delegate status to cancelled. So this is the approach you take if you don't want anything financial to happen. Doesn't matter if your delegate was invoiced, if they've paid, if they've not been invoiced. Doesn't really matter. If you don't want cancellation fees, refunds, new invoices, this is the route to take. So here we've added a new delegate to the course. Let's have a zoom in. That is Tina. So Tina's going to cancel now. You can see that she's currently booked on. You just need to make sure you've got that status column included in the data grid. Then when you go to the quick edit, change the status to cancelled and save and close. So very, very easy. As Jack mentioned before, they'll still get the cancellation confirmation emails and all of that stuff, but financially nothing's happening. So yeah, very easy.
So yeah, we'll just have a quick recap of the two cancellation options. So you can use the cancellation wizard for fees, for refunds, and for credits, or just change the delegate status if you don't want anything financial to happen. So before we move on, we have a few top tips for you on delegate cancellation. So the first one is have a clear set of terms and conditions around cancellations. It's important to set expectations up front. So include things such as cancellation notice periods, refund eligibility, and any admin fees that may apply if someone cancels. It's important to make sure your policy is available at the point of booking. And we've also seen some people add it into their booking confirmation emails too, just to make it super clear.
Second top tip is using cancellation reasons consistently. So you can capture in the platform the reason why someone is cancelling. So whether that's like illness, it's workload or travel or whatever it might be. And you do that using the delegate status reasons option in your platform. So this can be really helpful for spotting trends. It can, really help with that internal reporting and helping to make decisions around like future course scheduling and that kind of thing.
The next one may seem really obvious, but we've seen it before where people don't send a confirmation to the delegate or the booker outlining that the place has been cancelled. So using the workflow engine, it means you can automate all of this. If the cancellation affects any upcoming communications, so such as your join instructions, for example, make sure these workflows don't send to delegates with a status of cancelled. Within your rules, you can stipulate that so they get the cancellation email and nothing else in the future.
Yes. And then similarly, speaking about communications, our final tip is notifying trainers. So if the course has low numbers and you're cancelling someone late in the day, it's good practice to kind of update the trainer so they can update their plan as well. Again, you can automate this with workflows too. So you would do that by triggering a workflow to the trainer when the delegates booked option has changed on a course.
Lovely. So that was cancellations. We're now going to touch briefly on the rebooking feature, which is available in the platform. So you would use this when a delegate is cancelled and then they change their mind. So the delegate is still registered onto the course, but with a cancelled status. They won't be able to register onto the course again via the shopping basket. So this is the case where we'll use the rebook tool. So how does the tool work? You would navigate to your course. So you can see here we're back on our gardening level 1 course, and you want to find the delegate that you want to rebook. So in this case, we've got Barry. You right click and then select the rebook option from the context menu. And this will open the rebook delegate pop-up. Enter the cost that there is for rebooking. And then at the bottom, this gives you a nice summary. And then you click the rebook option. You'll now see that the delegate status in the data grid has changed to booked. So this is going to generate a new invoice for the customer. This tool does need to be enabled. It's not enabled as standard on every platform. So you can't find it when you're doing that right click option. Let a member of the team know and we'll get that turned on for you.
Yes, very cool feature. Okay, so on to our final section of today's webinar, which is transfers. So obviously transfers are different to cancellations in that the delegate is still going to be attending the course just on a different date or a different course. So in this section, we'll walk through how to transfer a delegate between courses. So what's happening behind the scenes when you do that, how it affects your invoices, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, so as with cancellations, there are 2 ways that you can transfer a delegate to free up their space on a course. So the first option, again, is the most popular, and this is the transfer wizard. The second option is where you simply change the delegate status on the course to transferred. And again, we're going to run through the differences between the two. So the transfer wizard will set the delegate status to be transferred. It's then going to register the delegate onto a new course and generate an invoice for them on that new course. It's also going to factor in any transfer fees that you may want to apply. And it's also going to credit off the remaining balance on their original invoice so that all the financials are tied up. Whereas with the change of the status, you change the status to transferred without using the wizard. Again, it just changes the status to transferred. That's it. No financial elements are touched with this option, but both options will trigger any transfer delegate workflows that you've got set up. So we'll look at them a bit more, both of them in a bit more detail, and we'll start with the transfer wizard. So the 3 transfer scenarios to consider. Transferring a delegate that is paid for. We'll be looking at transferring a delegate that has been invoiced but hasn't been paid. And finally, transferring a delegate that hasn't been invoiced at all. So let's see what happens when a delegate is paid is transferred to another course. So we're on our gardening level 1 course, and we've got 3 delegates. You can see that Sophie, her invoice is completed. So we're going to just check their invoice to see how much they have paid. And we can see it's £100 and nothing's outstanding. We can go into our transactions and see that they've paid via backs for the full £100. Perfect. So what we want to do now is select our delegate and right click. And we're going to transfer delegate. And by clicking that, we're going to get the transfer wizard pop over. So then using the select option, we are going to choose the course that we want to transfer them to. So in this case, we're going to move them onto gardening level 1 on the 14th of January next year. If there's any charge associated with the transfer, we can pop that in here. So in this case, £10. And then you've got a couple of other options for keeping things like the current billing address on the new invoice or any source information, and also popping any transfer notes that you want to transfer over. Gives you a nice summary, and then press transfer, and we can see that that is transfer done. So Sophie's status on this course is now transferred. And then if we right click and go to invoices, we will take a look at that original invoice. So when we go in, we can now see that the £100 has been credited. So that invoice is completed still, but has been credited off. And if we go into our transactions, we can see that we've got our credit note for £100 there to credit that invoice off. Lovely. So we are now going to have a look at Sophie on her new course. So we're going to look for a new invoice. So here is Sophie on the new course. We can have using our data grid views, we look at using to open up our transfer to column. And we can see this is Sophie now on the new course as a book delegate. If we go into our invoices, we can see that we've got the part completed invoice there. So I'll have a look at this invoice. You can see we've got the course charge and we've got our transfer charge on there for £10 as well. The total for that invoice now is £110. The £100 that Sophie's paid originally is there on our backs payment. And it's just a £10 that's remaining. That is our transfer fee. So we've now transferred Sophie. She's transferred on this course with the credited off invoice. Her new delegate has an invoice that contains her transfer charge, and the original payment has been moved across to the new invoice. So what would the process be for Sol and for Tracy on our course? So we'll start with Sol. They have an invoice, so the process is very similar, nearly the same. Sol will be transferred to the new course with the original invoice credited off. Sol will then be registered onto their new course, but with a new invoice, which will also contain their transfer charge. But that entire invoice will be outstanding and waiting for payment because nothing has been paid before. So whereas with Sophie, she had her part completed invoice because she'd made a part payment, Sol has made no payment, so will be fully outstanding. Tracy is going to be quite different because they don't have an invoice at all yet. So Tracy will be transferred to their new course, but there won't be any crediting and there won't be a new invoice generated because we've never had an invoice created for Tracy for this course or the new course that they're transferring to. Hopefully that all makes sense.
No, because there's a lot.
There's a lot to take in, yeah.
So I was going to say quickly, but actually not quickly. We'll spend a bit of time on this. What happens if a delegate transfers to a course that has a different price? So we do see it quite often where people are transferring to entirely different courses that could be cheaper, could be more expensive. So how do the financials work with all of that? So just quickly, importantly, like Tracy with the last example, if the initial booking doesn't have an invoice, the delegate will be transferred to the new course with no financial records created or copied. So those ones are quite clean and tidy, if you like. No automatic invoice generated, blah, blah, blah. So with all of this, assume that we have an invoice for these examples. So let's work with this one. So we've got a delegate registered onto a first aid at work course that costs £100, and they are transferring to a first aid at home course, which is £120. So what will happen is that original invoice will be credited, then a new invoice will be raised for the new booking. So that original invoice credited, we're not expecting any payments for this. So in this case, a credit note will be £100 assigned to this invoice, and then the brand new one will be created, and this will contain the new course, so the £120 plus any transfer fees that you applied. Then if there were any original payments on the original invoice, those will be transferred across to the new invoice. So if they've already paid the £100, that payment will be transferred across to the new invoice, so that £100 of that 120 is already paid off. So the balance that the customer owes is the new course amount plus the transfer fee minus any payments. So let's just stick some numbers on that. If our new course costs £120 and we applied a transfer fee of £10, they originally paid £100, then the customer owes us £30.
So let's flip the numbers around and we'll transfer a delegate to a cheaper course. So in this case, the delegate has been invoiced £120 for the original First Aid at Work course, and they're transferring to the First Aid at Home course that is £100. So the process is the same. Their original invoice will be completed and credited for this delegate. We're not expecting any payments for this. So in this case, a credit note for £120 will be assigned to the invoice. A brand new invoice will be created for the First Aid at Home course. This is going to contain the delegate on their new course, so the £100 cost, plus any transfer fees that you've applied for that. So if there are any payments on the original invoice for the delegate, this is also going to be transferred over to the new invoice. So if they paid £120, this payment will be transferred over to the new invoice. Importantly, unlike the cancellation wizard, the transfer wizard does not action any refunds. They have to be actioned by an administrator. So the final balance for your customer after this transfer will be the new course amount. It's going to take into consideration any transfer fees and minus off any payments that you've already made. So this does mean that you can end up with invoices that are overpaid. So putting some numbers against this, you can see our new course amount is £100. We have a transfer fee for £10, and the customer has paid £120. This is going to mean that their balance is £10 and they have overpaid by £10. It's then up to your admin to get that refund processed if needed. So to sum up, when you use the transfer wizard, the delegate status is changed to transferred. They are registered onto their new course. A new invoice will be raised if the original delegate had an invoice, and this will include any transfer fees that you apply. If the delegate was paid, the original payment for the delegate transferred to the new invoice. And finally, a credit note is generated to balance off the original invoice if they had one.
Thanks, Jack. So the second approach to transferring, and like kind of Jack touched on earlier, this isn't used too often, but this is just where you set the delegate to be transferred. So again, no transfer fees, no refunds, no new invoices, and no actual transfer takes place. You're just changing the delegate status from booked to transferred, which will then trigger any transfer confirmation emails or anything you've got going on with there. And same as the cancellation with this, just include the status column in your delegate data grid, then use the new quick edit button to change their status from booked to transferred, as you can see in this popover. And then if needed, you could then manually add the delegate to their new course as well. Now, one thing that we would just point out that we'd recommend with this is using notes just to record information about the transfer that you can then refer to later.
Yeah, perfect. So before we wrap up, we have a few top tips for you again on delegate transfers. So again, we're going to set our limits in terms and conditions. So it's important with the new terms and conditions to have a clear policy on how many times a delegate can transfer, how late that transfer can be made, and whether there are any fees or restrictions around that. It's going to protect you as an organization and also reduces any last minute disruption to the course.
Absolutely, yeah. Next is defining some standard transfer fees for consistency. So this is about establishing what transfer fees you're going to apply and when, and just making sure your team is clear. So whether that's, a fixed £15 fee per transfer, or if the fee increases the closer the course gets, just making sure your team are, fully aligned on what and when.
And confirm the transfer. It might seem obvious, but sending a confirmation to the delegate or to your booking user that outlining that the transfer has taken place and inform them that they'll get the new details of the course soon. The transfer should feel seamless to your customer, so we recommend having workflows set up to automate all of that for you.
Mm-hmm. And then the final one is notes. So to keep your platform up to date, keep your team informed, definitely consider logging notes to your delegates that have been transferred to provide that context. You can also use those delegate status reasons. Again, all this is really useful, kind of jogging your memory when you might be working with that customer down the road.
Yeah, so before we move on to our Q&A, we're going to have a quick recap. So today we've looked at the different ways you can manage cancellations, transfers and rebookings, and more importantly, which to use depending on what you and your customers need. So we've explored how to cancel a delegate using the cancellation wizard, with its cancellation fees, automatic refunds and credits, and when it might be more appropriate to simply change the delegate status to cancel to avoid any financial changes. We've looked at how to rebook a delegate who initially cancelled but now does want to attend again, so you can get them back on that course with minimal admin. And we looked at how to transfer a delegate using the transfer wizard, completing with fee options, crediting, and the refund tools available, and it books your delegate onto their new course. Or again, when a simple status change might be the smarter option if there are no financials involved. So as mentioned, we have our Q&A box open, so we will move on to any questions that you may have.
Yeah, anything on cancellations, rebookings, transfers, please put them in. And then while they come in, we have our usual little bank of questions that we've been asked for before that we think are great questions. So we'll go through those. I'll just check if we've had any in so far. No, cool. Okay, let's hit these. So I'll ask, you answer. Is that
Sounds
okay?
good. That's great.
Cool. Okay, so first question. Are any notes automatically logged for cancelled and transferred delegates?
So not for cancellations, but yes, for transfers and rebookings. There's an example on the screen in a minute. You can see this is Sophie that we used earlier as an example. You can see that automatic note that's been added in, telling you that they were transferred to this course and what course they were originally booked onto.
Thank you. Second question, do discounts apply to transferred delegates?
Sometimes is the answer to this one. So manual discounts that require someone to enter a discount code, they don't apply when the delegate is transferred. There isn't a way for you to type the discount code in within the transfer wizard, so that doesn't apply. However, if the discount is automatic and it's a delegate-based discount, this will apply, providing that your delegate meets any rules or exclusivity you've applied to that discount.
Cool.
That can be a bit confusing, so if you need to walk through that, let us know, but hopefully that makes sense.
And then price schemes are very similar. Do price schemes apply to transferred delegates?
Simply yes. Your price schemes will apply for any transfers.
Yeah, there's not really much to say.
Yeah, that's a real simple one. It will just apply, yeah.
And then final pre-prepared question, what about my delegates that have products and services?
Yep, so you can cancel products and services in both the cancellation and the transfer wizards. In the transfer wizard, you can also bolt on any products and services from the course that they're transferring to. So if they're changing courses, for example, and the new course needs a textbook or requires an overnight stay, you can add those on within that transfer wizard, which is really cool. So you don't have to do it all separately. It can all be done at the same time, which is great.
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you. Right, we've not had any questions come in, so I think this was quite a thorough session, so I think we'll move on.
Obviously, if you've got any questions, our support team are available. Pick up the phone, drop a ticket, drop an email. If you've got any specific, queries.
Things tend to crop up when you're doing it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you try and give it a go, or you try and do the rebook and it's not there, just let us know and we can help you out with those.
Cool.
Yeah, so I guess all that's left to say is thank you all for joining today, and thank you for your feedback on the survey. as mentioned, if you do need anything at all, please just drop us a ticket, give us a call, and we can help you out with this or anything else that you need from us. But yeah, hopefully you found it useful, and we'll see you on the next one.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Have a great
good rest of your day.
Bye.
Bye.